Hi, I'm Kara
And I'm Adam. Welcome back to Crunchy Cozy Games. So, we have been talking about our top 100 games of all time,
that we played last year.
of course. And one of the things that I know we've been asked a lot of is, wow, you guys played 100 games. And actually, we ended up playing more games than that. They just didn't all make it on our top 100 list.
hmm
But we also have some games that we love that didn't get played just because, some have high player counts or specific things that we need and we just didn't get around to them. So, what are some games that you like that we actually did not get played last year?
I think one of the biggest surprises for me and one of the more disappointing ones that we didn't play this year was Seven Wonders.
Oh, yeah.
That's a game that, the goal really was to play that with seven people.
Right.
Just because that's how many boards are available. That's,
hmm
you get one card from each hand as it's being passed around. Like I've never played it with that high of a player count. And I just really wanted to experience that. And so I was a little bit disappointed that we never got around to it.
Yeah, odd number player counts are always one of those difficult things. Like
hmm
I've never understood why so many board games have, 2 to 5 players.
Sure.
Like why is five the optimal number? Because, it's like you get a couple and then half of a couple or something like that. And I guess it's just because our gaming group is mostly couples.
Yeah.
One that I'm really disappointed that we didn't get to play, and it really just is more or less that I think the game is played better with more people
hmm
than even six sometimes, and that's Cosmic Encounter.
Oh, yeah.
I adore that game. I think it is very silly. I think it's kind of a party game masquerading as a strategy game.
Yeah.
But I think that game is just so excellent at higher player counts, like six plus, of making deals with other alien
hmm
races and
hmm
setting up your bases. I just think that game is so fun,
Yeah.
and it just did not make it to the table this time.
Yeah. I think it was pretty close. I mean, it was right at the end of 2022 that we
Yeah.
played it. It was like right
Yeah.
on the edge because it was at the same time that we played another one that we didn't get to the table, which was Ankh.
Oh, was it the
Was it
same
not the
time?
same
It
time?
might not have been. I don't remember
Okay.
exactly, but you're right. Unk is another one we didn't make to the table. That's another game that I really enjoy, but I don't think it ever grabbed you the same way.
I think the minis are too much.
It's overproduced for sure.
I think that the playability might have been even better if some of the things had been tokens or standees. I think the
Yeah.
miniatures for everything was overkill.
Yeah, I mean, especially the player characters in that game. I mean, they're big minis, and then your board is just your normal hexagonal board. And the minis take up so much space that it's hard to
hmm
see everything on the board.
Well, and hard to place things where they need to be to have desired effects. Like the one
Right.
that comes to mind is the scorpion
Uh-huh.
that has to have its claws pointing at a specific thing. And
Right.
with a mini that big and the claws are so high, like they're high up that you can't quite see where it's pointing. I don't know.
Yeah.
I
It's
feel
an
like the,
interesting game.
yeah,
It's another gorgeous minis game. I mean, the minis are incredible
they're
in that
super
game.
cool. They're just super unnecessary.
Yeah. So I don't. Let's jump into our list.
All right. So number 70 for me
Mhm.
is a cute little roll and write, very
Ah,
colorful that we've talked about before, and that
yes.
is Mind Space.
Uh-huh.
So what I really like about Mind Space is, it's got that cute. It's in a cute little box. It's very portable, very travel friendly, and I had a really good time with like the combination of like how unique the dice rolls are and what determines what shapes you can play. I really enjoyed just kind of the shared marker pool, the color palette.
Yeah.
It was very soothing to play. So I really enjoyed it. Number 70, Mind
Yeah,
Space.
I like that game because it's a roll and write that I didn't really have too much of that like anxiety of like all the lines matching up.
Sure.
You could really just kind of draw the shapes.
hmm
I also appreciate that the dice were all kind of like brain themed.
Yes.
Like they all had
Yeah.
kind of the ridges and the
Uh
bumps in
huh.
them like a brain does. That
Yeah.
was neat.
Very cool.
My number 70 is a game we have not talked about yet,
Okay.
and it is my favorite of the Century games, and that
Ooh.
is
Okay.
Century Eastern Wonders. So the three different games each kind of have their own core mechanism.
hmm
The first one is kind of like Splendor. It's your card drafting, and you
hmm
get cards that give you permanent resources that then you use to buy other cards and points that way.
Sure.
And then you have A New World, which is the third game in that
Mm-hmm.
trilogy,
Okay.
which is kind of your generic worker placement. Like you
Yeah.
place a worker, and it's got some interesting new ideas in that. But I
Mm-hmm.
think this one, Eastern Wonders, has the most unique setup because the board it's these different tiles that you're putting around and 4 ports of call,
Mm-hmm.
and you're moving your boat around to these different islands, putting an outpost on there, claiming the spices, and then trading those spices at different outposts. And then you finally bring it back to port to basically pay for an order, and then you
Mm-hmm.
get the points involved in that.
Sure.
It's a super fast playing game. I like kind of zipping around the board with my boat. But I
Well, and they
really,
make you zip because
right,
the one that has just been sold to that port is blank for
right.
the next turn.
Well, and this is one that I'm really interested in playing at a higher player count
Yeah.
because
Oh,
I
absolutely.
I think then, one of the mechanisms in the game that we didn't really take advantage of with 2 players is that it costs more depending on how many players already have an outpost at that
It's true.
tile.
And with two players, we were able to mostly work around each other
Hmm.
and really able to avoid paying extra for our outposts.
Right.
And if there were more people, you're not really able to do that.
Well, there's also that interesting mechanism where as you are putting your outpost down on the
Mm-hmm.
board, depending on what color spice they're related
Mm-hmm.
to, you're also unlocking other score and other bonuses
Right.
that way. So that's really interesting.
It is.
Yeah, my number 70 is Century Eastern Wonders. I had to think about it for a second there.
All right. My number 69 is another one that we've talked about already. It is Colt Express.
Yeah, I like that
I
one.
just, I had a grand time
Hmm.
playing this game. I think, it's super impressive on the table. And I know that the pieces are a little bit fiddly, but I think that the way that it has you kind of set the cards in the deck, like it really forces
Yeah.
that programming aspect, which I think, in a lot of games you kind of work around it, right? Like you're supposed to choose your cards in advance and play in
Hmm.
order, but you don't really. And in this one, it it is really fun to kind of see how the turn plays out.
Right.
Um,
This one's definitely all about the stories of like, you place the shoot card, and then when it comes up to your turn, there's nobody around. So you basically just shoot down the cars at
right,
nobody. And everybody just kind of has a laugh, and you're like, oh, well, missed that one. And then
right.
you're good to go on the next
Yeah.
round.
So I think the player interaction is really interesting. It's a very fun game.
Yeah.
So yeah, Colt Express number 69.
All right. My number 69 is a really neat engine building game.
Okay.
That's Furnace.
Oh, yeah.
So Furnace is, I'm trying to think of how to describe it. It's basically like an industrial revolution engine building game
Mhm.
where you are essentially building businesses. I don't remember what the resources are specifically
Yeah.
because I mean we just played Brass Birmingham, and so I'm getting those resources mixed
Yeah,
in my head a little bit.
that's kind of a common board game theme,
Yeah,
isn't it?
but I think what's interesting about this game is that it plays so quick. Like I think it's only over about 5 rounds.
Yeah.
And what's really neat about it is that as you build your engine up, you have to be cognizant of the fact that you're building this engine, but you need the different resources to basically fuel that engine.
Mhm.
And the most interesting aspect of this game is the auction mechanic behind it
Yeah.
because you've got these 4 tabs, and you reveal these different cards at the start of a
Mhm.
round, and then you basically put your token on which ones you want to bid on, 1 through 4, 4
Mhm.
being like the I'm going to take this card, that's my trump card, and 1 being like the I could take it but I don't really need it.
Right.
The interesting aspect about that is that if I put my 4 on a card, you can't, and no one else can.
Mhm.
So essentially, that's my card. Now you're like, well, I mean, then you put that on the one that you want, and the first player is always going to get the card they want. That's true, but sometimes you don't actually want the card. Sometimes you actually just want the bonus that comes for
Mhm.
being the second highest bidder.
Right.
And so it's sort of this push and pull, this like, okay, I
Yeah.
want that one, but what I really want is this one, so I'm going to put my 3 on it and hope that nobody really wants the card.
Mhm.
And then, of course, if they do, then you're like, I'm stuck with it.
Right.
So I just really enjoy that.
Yeah. That is one
Oh, excuse me.
that is one that did not make my list.
Ah, bummer.
But Yeah, it is a fun little game.
Yeah, I think we need to play it again because it was
Yeah,
a little bit of a rough teach. We were all learning at the same
we
time,
were.
but yeah, I think it's worth a second playthrough.
Okay.
So yeah, my 69 furnace.
Right. 68 for me is Survive.
Yeah,
Yeah. Did we already talk about Survive?
I did. I had it on my
Yeah.
list already.
Yeah, that's the
I think.
is it? It's the one with the island with the
Yes.
boats. Yes.
I feel like we talked about
We
it.
did talk about it. I wasn't sure if I was mixing it up with something else in my head. But yeah, this game is really fun. Like you said, we have not had a playthrough where we're not just laughing
Oh, yeah.
about how silly it is and cursing each other for moving the Kraken and for dropping us in the water. I mean,
It's very
just
mean, but it's also like as long as you go into it knowing that your partners and people are going to screw you over, you're okay.
right. The idea, like, you can't play that game without messing with other people.
Right.
The
It's the
entire
whole
game,
intent.
it relies on that, and I think as long as you are feeling like lighthearted and fun about it, it's a really enjoyable experience to play. So 68, Survive.
All right, my 68 is a game that has a really silly little gimmick that I think the first time you showed me this game, I was a little bit like, okay, you know which one I'm talking about.
Maybe.
My number 68 is Books of Time.
Yes.
Which I will admit, I enjoyed this a lot more than I thought I was going to.
Yeah, you were not super excited when we got this
Well,
one.
because the basic premise of this game is that you have these 3 different 2-ring binders that you are putting together. And so it's kind of a card drafting game where you're
Mhm.
claiming these different cards that have actions on them, and then you're putting them into a book.
Which is where it turns into a little bit of engine building.
Right, because
Yeah.
when you take a specific action, then you also get to activate your book and you literally flip the
Mhm.
pages. So, if you insert a page on one spot and then you are going to turn the page, you get that action when you
Mhm.
take the overall action. It has a really neat element of strategy for it because, sometimes you don't want to take a card because or take that specific action because
Right.
your book is on a different page.
Right. You want to like delay somehow, do something else.
Right.
Mhm.
Or, if you have the ability to flip back to the beginning, the next time you
Yes.
take that action, you're going to be able to run through the whole book and get even more resources.
Yeah, there is like that reset ability.
Yeah.
But figuring out when you should do that, because there's also a bonus action if you get to the end of the book, if you
Right.
just keep going.
Mhm.
So, there's a lot of strategy in it.
Yeah. I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I was going to. I'm still not in love with the theming behind it.
Sure.
It's just like generic history and a look through history. And I think that there are games that we have played this year that do that theme a little bit better.
Sure.
But
That's
I will
fair.
say that the gimmick actually works super well, and I had a lot of fun building my books and flipping the pages.
Yeah.
So yeah, my 68, Books of Time.
All right, for 67, here we come with a nice surprise, really close number.
Ooh.
Century Eastern Wonder.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So your order of the Century games is different from mine.
Yes.
You like Spice Road best.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That
Again,
figures.
it's just like the Splendor
Yeah,
parallel.
I totally get it.
I really enjoy that. But yeah, what was Century Eastern Wonder for you? Was it 69?
70.
70. So, 70, 67, that's really close.
It is.
We liked it about the same.
I have a theory that our list is gonna be pretty different until we get to maybe the 30s, and then they're gonna start really syncing up because we kind of know what games we really like and what games we talk about.
It's
so
true.
I suspect a lot of those at the top are gonna start syncing up more.
Yeah.
Okay, my number 67 is a game that you've talked about already. That is Call to Adventure Stormlight Archive.
Yes.
So I really enjoy this game. Now, I will say I sought out this specific version of Call to Adventure because I knew you were a big Brandon Sanderson fan.
I think at the time I had just backed his big secret surprise.
Yeah, I think that checks out.
And Kickstarter thing.
Being how much you like Splendor and apparently Century Spice Road, I thought to myself I've heard from people that this is a better version of that. And so I was like, okay, the theme and the gameplay, I think that's going to match up really well. For me, I do like it more than Splendor. I like the aspect of, I don't know, I guess they're just D2s essentially, which are,
Yeah.
they're basically like coins that you're flipping, but you
Mm-hmm.
basically shake them in your hands and you spill them out, and then whichever
Yeah.
ones have an icon on there are hits, whichever ones are blank are not
Mm-hmm.
hits. I really enjoy that mechanism. I didn't have the problems of the narrative as you did because I don't
Yeah.
know the source material at all. But yeah, my number 67. I've
Call
already
to
forgotten it.
Adventure.
Call to Adventure, Stormlight Archive.
Mm-hmm. For me, 66 is one I don't know that we've talked about yet. Lost Ruins of Arnok.
Ooh.
I think one of the like this is a really excellent game. There's a lot of things going on in it. There's some worker placement. There's a little bit of racing to it. Um, but I think the most memorable thing about this game is when we first played it, not last year, but the
Okay.
first time we played it.
Yeah.
We watched a how to play video that was so it was supposed to be funny, and it was
It's very funny.
where it explained the rules totally wrong. I don't remember the name of the channel. We'll have to give them a shout out in the comments.
It's
But
like the Dragon's Thorn or
something like
that.
that.
Yeah.
But that was my first exposure to the game, and then after that, learning it and learning the actual rules was very fun. It's a very cool theme. You're exploring a jungle, collecting resources, finding treasure, and battling these
Guardians. Yeah.
guardians of these shrines. And you're collecting relics. This time that we played, we included the expansion, where we had
Expedition Leaders, because there is a
yes.
second expansion out now.
Oh, okay. So we had played one of the expansions, and I think that added a really interesting element to the game. And both of our expedition leaders played totally differently.
Right.
And so
Yeah, you were trying to get curses.
yes, because then I could spend the curses to do things.
Right.
And so, I really wanted to be on the Guardian spaces, and it was a very different playthrough than the first time, but in a good way.
Yeah.
So yeah, Lost Ruins of Arnok is number 66 for me.
My number 66 is another game that we played for the first time this year, and one that I would say surprised me a great deal, and that is Orichalcum. So this one, the cover of the box, it's very cartoonish, and it looks like it's going to be this Greek mythology. You're fighting a bunch of monsters. It looks like it's going to be like super heavy in minis, and it's not that at all. You're essentially building an island with different terrain, and certain times you will draw some of those monsters, and to defeat those, you have to use your hoplites, which I thought was really cool. But I really enjoyed the actual puzzle aspect of it, because all your pieces are these like duo sets of tiles that you're placing, and you're basically trying to maximize your space, and you get bonuses for matching the terrain in certain areas. So it's a really unique game. I mean, I don't think we've played anything like it. So yeah, my number 66, Orichalcum.
It's gonna feel like deja vu because my number 65 is Orichalcum.
You have no idea.
So that's it.
Neat little game.
It's a cute game.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. I think the art style was a little bit weird to me.
It's very cartoonish.
It is. But the game itself is very enjoyable. It's also one that I think was pretty quick.
Yeah, it plays like
relatively
maybe 40 minutes.
So yeah, definitely fun to check out. I also think that it's one that the way that it scaled down to 2 people made a lot of sense.
Right.
And it didn't feel like we were missing anything by having a lower player count.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it basically sets up the market and with certain cards, and if you have more players, there's just more cards in the market.
Exactly. And it sweeps consistently. That's something that I appreciate about games with stores where there is something built into the game where it resets. And I think that this game did a really good job of that.
Yeah. So speaking of deja vu, my number 65, Lost Ruins of Arnok. Yeah.
Oh, we just flipped them.
Yeah, we sure did. So really close there.
Yeah.
Like I said, I think as we get
Yeah.
higher and higher
Oh
up the
man,
list,
that
they're going to
is
start matching
so
up a little
close.
more. Yeah, I really like Lost Ruins of Arnak, and I
Yeah.
really like that style of game where you
Mm-hmm.
have these different things that you can do,
Yeah.
and it's really hard to figure out like what you want to prioritize. And I think the thing that puts this on the middle of my list as opposed to way up at the top, because I love the theme, I
Mm-hmm.
love the art. I I think the thing that holds it back for me is I just always leave that game wishing I had a few more turns.
Yeah.
Like, I wish I could have gotten even more research. I wish I could have defeated a couple more guardians.
Mm-hmm.
And, you just have to make peace with the fact that you can't do everything.
Yeah.
And
That's true.
in some aspects, I love that because it gives everybody an avenue that they can explore, that they can do.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, it definitely feels like, oh man, you're playing a really interesting game, and I wish I was doing that too.
And it is one that is hard. Like you can't really pivot in the middle and
Right.
switch. It would be incredibly difficult
Right.
to switch strategies in the middle.
Yeah. Also, again, I just love the art style in this. I love the pieces that you get,
The
the
pieces are
arrowheads and
nice.
the
Mm-hmm.
tablets and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's super neat, but I do feel like it's a game that you can kind of prioritize in one way or the other.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the only way that you can win is by also going down that research track, which I know
It's
the
just
first time
so
we
high.
played,
It's so high scoring.
it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, my number 65, Lost Ruins of Arnak.
All right, number 64 for me is a new one that we played this year, and it is Lacrimosa.
Hmm.
So this one is Mozart themed,
Yeah.
and
Weird.
I mean, a very unique theme. We don't have anything else like that theme wise. But the game is really interesting. You're kind of taking a journey through Mozart's life um, while also like playing instruments to complete the symphony. And you are basically like, as you play, you're like writing music, and you have to decide if you're going to hold on to your music or if you're going to sell out and make some money. And so there's a lot of things going on, and it just really struck a chord. So I enjoyed it. The theme was really nice. The gameplay was like the right amount of complicated.
Yeah.
And we played it at 4 players, and I thought it played really well at that player count. It was very fun. It seemed like we all got to do some really interesting things. We all had really good turns, and because we had that many players, things were moving really like around the board. Whereas
Right.
I feel like if we were playing that as at a lower player count, I think it would feel a little slow and it would drag.
Yeah, it's got an interesting mechanism in that game where you like basically build your deck of cards
Mhm.
with how many rounds there are.
Mhm.
And so there's just certain ones that fill up the market. And so as it gets later in the game, those cards change throughout.
Mhm.
This is another game that you could kind of pick a lane. You can kind of focus on one thing,
Sure.
like you could travel around Europe and
Mhm.
fill in those, or you could focus on finishing the Requiem, or you could just focus on buying songs and selling them.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting little game. I think the theme is a little out there.
It's bizarre.
But
But I think it works.
I love having games like that in the
Yeah.
collection because they're just so unique.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So 64, Lacrimosa.
Okay, my number 64, I think people are going to say it's too low. And I absolutely understand that. I think you're going to be one of those people that says it's too low.
Sure.
But for me, it's just never clicked in the same way that other worker placement games do. And that's Viticulture.
Oh, okay.
I like Viticulture a lot.
Yeah.
I love making wine. I love sliding the little crystal tabs over and then moving it over to the wine cellar. I love building the different parts of the winery. But every time we have played it, I have gotten stuck. Where it's like on the final round, I have to have a worker that is going to finish the wine order, and then I have to have another one that's going to like ship it out.
And you only have one of those, the like big meeples that lets you duplicate one that's already been
worker.
The grande worker.
Right.
Yeah.
I always feel like I get stuck.
Sure.
and it's my own fault because you've got this really neat mechanism that is like the wake up order.
Hmm.
Depending on how early you wake up, depends on how early you're going to go in the actual round. The trouble with that, though, is that as you wake up later, the rewards get greater,
They do.
just like in real life. So I always found myself kind of like, oh, I'm gonna wake up later so I can get one of these cool rewards, and then I get to that last round at the end, and I'm just stuck.
Yeah.
Now, I will say I have heard from a lot of people that that game improves greatly when you buy the Tuscany expansion, which
Mm.
we actually just got. So I will
Hmm.
be interested to try it with that expansion.
Yeah. Oh, that's exciting.
But yeah, my 64, Viticulture.
My 63, I think you might be surprised that it's as low on my list as it is, but my 63 is Project L.
I mean, that doesn't surprise me. It was my 99.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. So I really like Project L. It's competitive tangrams. It's super fun. I it, it's just it's quick.
Hmm.
I think that the way that they've designed the turns really makes a lot of sense. I Yeah, I just really like it a lot.
Yeah.
So Project L.
I think it's neat. The only thing that still bothers me about that is you've got 5 types of actions that you can take on your turn. You get to
Hmm.
choose 3. The one that always bothers me is the master action of like you get to place 1 piece on each of the puzzles that you
I
have.
think the thing is though, if you didn't have that master action, the game would take so long.
Right.
They need to have something that lets you do multiple things in one turn.
Yeah, and I get
And
that.
there is definitely strategy in like pulling extra cards because there's a risk to that.
Sure.
Because the risk is that you're going to not end up with enough tiles to place to cover all of them.
Right.
Because you can't pull them off once they're on there.
Right.
And so once they're on there, if you run out of tiles, you have to focus on collecting more
Right.
rather than adding and scoring.
Yeah.
So it is a balance, and I think that is one of the things that makes it a good game.
Yeah,
Me.
I totally understand, and I think that's just a difference of opinion. It's just
Sure.
one of those things that I feel like the strategy is just get all the puzzles that you can have as max,
Hmm.
and then start taking that master action every turn.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's just my opinion on it.
Sure. Yeah. 63 Project
All
L.
right, my 63 is a game that you have talked about that I think I like a little bit more than you, and that's Jamaica.
Oh yeah.
Jamaica is just a cute little racing game. I
Hmm.
think it definitely plays better with more people because then you have more conflicts. You have
Sure.
people fighting over treasure. You have people giving other people cursed treasure.
What do you think is the ideal player count for it?
I
Because
think 6.
we played it at 4.
Right. I think 6. I don't know. I don't remember how many it plays. It's one of the few games that we played last year that's not currently in our collection.
Sure.
Um, but yeah, I think 6 would be the optimal number because
Okay.
everybody starts at the same place, and then because of the cards that you're drawing to move and
Hmm.
the dice that you're rolling to do all that, uh, I think that ends up with people
Sure.
in the same space more often.
Right. Especially as you go for those treasures in like the coves.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, and then there's kind of like branching paths that you can
Hmm.
take to take the faster path or the one that has more treasure.
Right.
But the other element that's really interesting is that there are cursed treasures that
Mm.
basically score negative points at the end of
Right.
the game. And so then, you might not get a treasure yourself, but you might challenge somebody else, and then you
Right.
get to take a treasure. And it's always very satisfying as a player that gives away their cursed treasure to another player.
Yeah, we didn't end up with very many battles the time that we played either.
Right.
Just like not a lot of interaction.
Well, there's also that wagering system where you're putting how much gunpowder you're doing to get power, and y'all were just too peaceful. So yeah,
fair.
my 63 is Jamaica.
62 for me is Seven Wonders Duel.
Whoa, that's a lot lower than I thought it was going to be.
Oh, really? I really like Seven Wonders Duel. I
Yeah.
think that it is a fantastic two-player game. I think that maybe this is one where I think we've played through the expansions at this
Yes.
point.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, I feel like I kind of just prefer the regular game.
Yeah, I think I don't remember what they're all called. There's Pantheon, which is the gods.
Yeah.
That doesn't do a lot for me. I like the Agora one where you have the senators, and it
Yeah,
creates
that
an
one's
interesting win condition.
Sure, that was definitely the best one, but
Yeah.
I think that it just adds more busyness
Hmm.
to the game, and I don't think it needs it. I think
Yeah.
it's a very elegantly designed game as it is.
Yeah.
And like I said, the scaling down Seven Wonders as it was to a two-player game and making it a really good game, I think is really impressive. And it's one that we have, I mean, obviously we bought expansions, we've come back to it several
It's
times.
great.
So yeah, so Seven Wonders Duel is
Yeah.
my 62.
I love that game. I think it is one of my favorite two-player games. So
Yeah.
we'll obviously talk about it later. But the thing that I just think is so unique about that is they basically figured out a way to do a drafting game for two people.
Yeah, the like kind of solitaire-esque,
Uh-huh.
like tower solitaire
Yeah.
mechanic of like how you lay out the cards is super, super interesting.
It's just genius. I
Yeah.
love that game.
Yeah.
My 62 is another game that you've discussed already. It's a cooperative game,
Hmm.
and that's Horrified.
Okay, yeah.
I love the tone of this game.
Hmm.
I think it's so fun to
Very
take on those
campy.
classic movie monsters. I think that the people that you are rescuing and taking to their paths that they need to go is super fun. I think all the hero characters that you get have
Yes.
fun and interesting powers.
Yes.
And I think the thing I
And
like,
useful powers.
yes, the
Yeah.
thing I love about that game that, I mean, Pandemic obviously is the board game that set cooperative games up to be as successful as they are. But the one thing I love about this game that I really despise in Pandemic is that when you go to a location and you do the pick up items, you pick up all the items that are there.
You don't have to unlock that ability.
Right. It's not something you have to unlock. And in
Yeah.
Pandemic, that's one of the most frustrating things. You get to a location that has 3 cubes on it, and you're like, okay, I spend 3 of my actions on my turn removing all of those
Yeah.
cubes.
Yeah.
So I just love that. It makes the game super snappy. I think the combat mechanism in that game is super neat.
It's really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I really like it a lot. It's, I think, one of my favorite cooperative games,
Hmm.
and it's just so silly.
Would you want to play the American Monsters edition?
Yes, even though like the cryptids I don't think are as interesting to me. I don't think
Sure.
the chupacabra is nearly as cool as Frankenstein's monster.
Sure.
But I will say the Greek monsters one that just came out last year,
Ooh.
very interested in that.
Ooh.
So
I didn't know that that was a thing.
yeah,
Very
it's
cool.
absolutely a thing,
Yeah,
and I would love to try that.
I would also be more interested in that theme.
So yeah,
For sure.
62, Horrified.
All right. Ending my list today at 61 is Azul Summer Pavilion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So this is one of 4.
One of 3 that we're going to talk about.
Yes, one of 3 that we're going to talk about. So Summer Pavilion is the version of Azul that has kind of the diamond shaped pieces, and that are set in kind of like a spot, like circles around your board.
Mm-hmm.
It has very similar mechanics to the rest of the Azul games. I think that this one added a really interesting element with that like center circle that was wild.
Right.
That I really enjoyed. I also appreciate, was this the second one? No, this was the third one.
The third one, yeah. The second one's the stained glass sutra.
This is something that they kept from the second one, but I appreciate that there's like a discard place.
Yeah.
for the tiles. That's something that I think is missing from the standard game. But yeah, so for me, number 61 is Azul Summer Pavilion.
My 61 is a game in a series that we just discovered this year, and that is Trekking the World.
Ooh.
So yeah, we just discovered this series. I really enjoy the games that we've played in it thus far. This one, to me, I really like because you're basically bebopping around the world.
Yep.
You're taking chartered flights to get to a location, and then you're playing your cards to basically cash out and get the memories from that place. It's one of those like sneaky educational games where you've got the location cards that have the resources you need to get those, but on the back of them you can read interesting facts about these places.
It's also a collector game where you want to be the first person to go somewhere so that you can get the collectible, the
Right.
like postcard or the statue or whatever it is.
What's really neat about that game for me is that you're required to do two things on your turn.
Hmm.
One of those things is you have to move if you're able. And so to move, you have to play one of the cards.
Hmm.
So you basically, the cards are also the resources that you need to then
Yeah.
buy it. So even if you land on a location that you need to cash those resources in at the end of your turn, the next time you have to move and you can't ever move back to the location that you
Hmm.
just were. You
Yep.
can do it on a different turn,
Right.
but in the same turn you can't move off a space and move back to a
Right.
space, which really sets up kind of this like idea of thinking a couple turns ahead,
Yes.
because there's different resources that are, it's like water and cameras, and I mean, just the
Hmm.
resources themselves don't really matter, except like when you're drawing cards, you're like, okay, I have to move two spaces to get to the place I need to cash these in,
Right.
so which of my cards can I give up to do that?
Right.
And I enjoyed that. I also just think it's a very charming little game. It's
It
very
is.
colorful.
It is very
It
colorful.
is a game I would play with my parents. So yeah, my
Your parents would
61.
really like that
I
game.
Yeah, I think they absolutely would. So my number 61, Trekking the World. All right, well that's going to bring it to the end of what this is, our fourth video in
It
our
is.
10-part series, as it were.
Yes.
If you're having a good time with us, please do like and subscribe to the channel. We've got lots of ideas on games that we want to share with you after we
Hmm.
get done with this list. We really want to do more showing some of our favorite games.
Hmm.
And the big thing for us is we have our own kind of like rating scale. And it's not necessarily like how good a game is or how bad a game is. It's more of like, who would prefer this type of game?
Hmm.
We've got the crunchy cozy scale, as it were.
And there are two separate scales. There's
Right.
the crunchy scale and the cozy scale. And so
Right.
each game gets a crunchy score and a cozy score.
Yeah.
And two very two two games might have the same score. That doesn't mean that one is better than the other. We
Right.
might like one more than the other,
Right.
but everyone has their like, we like games that we like. We
Hmm.
don't need to tell you what to like.
Right.
But we can tell you what we think, as far as like complexity and how enjoyable something is to play.
Right. And,
Yeah.
we will go over some of the things we like or dislike about a
Yeah.
game. But that, I feel like we're not experts in the board game space.
No,
We
absolutely
just
not.
have games that we really enjoy and would like to share with other people.
Yeah.
So if you want to get notified when we post those videos, again, give us a subscribe and we'll post when the next video is going up. Thanks so much for stopping by.